there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. So just a couple of videos ago I did a video using the colour red, and I will admit that red is not my go-to colour for to be a primary colour on my card. So today I am kind of challenging myself. It's been fun this year. I've done that with a couple of cards. And along those same lines, I am also going to be using some gilding flakes today on my card in slightly different ways to create a little bit of a marble effect. So first of all, I'm starting off with a piece of watercolor paper. I have sprayed down the front with some water to get the colour moving. The colour is Candied Apple Distress Oxide. However, one of my fabulous subscribers told me that if I spray the back of the card too, I will not get as much buckling, and that way the colour kind of stays where I want it a little bit more rather than running to the sides. So they are 100% correct. That is a great little tip. If you spray the back of the paper as well as the front, then it will stay nice and flat. This does mean that of course you're adding a little bit more water and it will take a little bit longer to dry. However, that's just the name of the game when you add more water to get a flat piece of paper. So once it had all dried, I used some more of that ink just to give it some splatters. This is just kind of a background, although it will kind of feature, you need to remember that backgrounds are backgrounds. Now I have these Gilding Flakes. This is a tiny little kit. It has a really good price point because Gilding Flakes is not something that I use often at all. So this is the Cosmic Shimmer, or one of them. I think they have lots of these little kits. But I want to use the Gilding Flakes as sort of a marbling effect today. So I'm going to use the glue, and it has this relatively fine point on the end. And you can see where the watercolor dried back. I am just going to follow those lines a little bit, not all the way and not everywhere, but follow them around and just put a tiny little bit of glue. You can almost see it just shining here when I move it. So that's the glue when I've straight away put it on. So I'm not putting it on so there's big white glue everywhere. And this will dry back to be clear, of course. Now I'm just putting here and there, making little lines, and I kind of want this to look like a bit of a marbling effect in the background to bring a bit more interest to the card, because this is a pretty simple card and I had a whole lot of fun doing it. And of course, if you didn't want to use Gilding Flakes, then you could probably just do the same with embossing, like a gold embossing, and use an embossing pen. There are several different ways to get a similar look. Now I'm going to use a sentiment here that says thank you. I've been needing a few of these cards recently, but with all of my cards I do think that you can use any sentiments that you want. They certainly don't have to be thank yous. You could be these birthday cards or sympathy cards. You can kind of just tone it to be whichever you need, whatever kind of card you need or sentiment you need. And I think this one is still available. It might not be, it might be discontinued, but if it is still available, I will link everything down below. Now here is where, again, I'm going to use the Gilding Flakes because that's what I have out, and it's nice not to have to use heaps and heaps of products. But if you do not have these, then go ahead and just use embossing powder or use a gold ink pad, anything. There's lots of different ways around it, but I'm just showing you one way that I was able to do it today. So I'm using a little sponge and adding a little bit of that same glue that came in that tiny little kit. In the kit is a one glue and one sponge foam and one little bottle of the Gilding Flakes. Gilding Flakes last forever, so I don't see a reason why I needed a really big packet at all. Now here, I just thought I would try this out. This is the scrapbook.com glue that they came out with not too long ago. I'm just putting a little glob down and then spreading it out with my fingers, and I suspect that any tacky glue basically works with Gilding Flakes. And I think that that's exactly what the Cosmic Shimmer glue is. It's just a dries tacky glue. But I thought I would just do a quick experiment and pop it in this video just in case you already have a glue like this in your stash. So there is the scrapbook.com one, and this is the smallest kind of bottle that the scrapbook.com one comes in, and then the Cosmic Shimmer one as well. Now I just spread it out with my finger so that it's a nice thin layer, and I will put this aside to dry and I'll come back to it in a minute. However, for now I put my panel aside, and then this one here is completely dry. You can see that there is a little bit of shine where the glue has dried. So now I'm going to open up my gold Gilding Flakes, and then again, you want to be careful. This is not a super mess-free activity. However, I found that I could keep it pretty good. I don't usually like a whole lot of mess. but I just kind of go slow, and you definitely don't want to have these out on a windy day. So all I'm doing is getting a few of the gilding flakes, and I can roughly see, if I kind of shift the page around, where the glue is, and I just want those nice thin lines of glue that are now nice and dry and they are tacky. They are going to pick up the gilding flakes. So you can do as much marbling in the background as you want to. You can do as little, or you could use a stencil to kind of stencil a pattern through, and then you could put the gilding flakes over top. There's lots of fun things that you could do. I just wanted a little bit of gold in the background so that it kind of brought out what I was going to use for the sentiment as well. So for the sentiment, you guys saw that I added the tacky glue to just one layer of the thank you sentiment, and you can see I've cut out a whole lot more to the left there as well. Now again, I am just using the gilding flakes because that's what I have out, that's what I have on my desk, and it's just another good way that you can use the products that you already have. However, something, as I said, like embossing would be perfectly fine and work just as easy, and honestly get pretty similar results. But if this is something that you already have in your stash, you already have the gilding flakes, or you want to give them a try, then they are fun. And I always love to see what other people do with those products, especially the ones that I kind of use and pop away in my drawer. So yeah. Anyhow, I have applied most of the gilding flakes with my fingers so that all of that tacky glue is covered, and then I'm just going to come in with a nice big paintbrush here and kind of remove all of those excess flakes, and you can see it starts to become a lot more defined, and you can definitely kind of get to see that beautiful gold shine, and obviously the gilding flakes are just going to stick to those little fine letters. Now I die cut so many of these because this is a really fine sentiment and it does cover up a nice big portion of the page, so I cut out lots of them so that I can stack them up and kind of make them into a little bit more of a dimensional sentiment to go in the middle. So once I have the gold one here all covered and ready to go, I am going to use a technique that I use often and just put out some normal glue. I use the Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish, and that does not dry tacky. It dries completely clear and it dries without any shine or anything, even if it squishes out the side a little bit. And I am just going to pop down all of the words thank, and then sponge on a little bit of that multi-medium glue, and then I will do the word you as well. Now I did just want to take a second here and say that I see I am approaching 50,000 subscribers, and that blows my mind. I still pinch myself and find it hard to believe that people want to spend their time watching my videos. So I appreciate it so much. It is amazing, and I just am really grateful for the supportive community that has come to be because of this YouTube channel. Anyway, I will have a giveaway coming up. I'm going to do a nice big giveaway because I really do just appreciate you all so much. So thank you so much for subscribing and hitting those thumbs up and joining my Facebook group and supporting me on Instagram. All of those things, they mean so much to me. So please know that I really, really do appreciate it. Anyhow, back to the card. I am nearly finished here. I'm just going to pop on the final layer, so the gold layer will go right on top, and I just kind of use my fingers to pinch together these really fine detailed little sentiments here. So now once everything is said and done, they have 4 layers of cardstock. I think it was only 80-pound cardstock, so if you had a heavier weight paper, then you could probably get away with less layers as well. Now back to the little experiment that I did, you can see that if I turn these in the light, they have dried nicely and there is just a little bit of shine there. The scrapbook.com glue is on the right and the Cosmic Shimmer one is on the left. I'm adding a few little gilding flakes to each one, and then I just rub them on with my finger. I have quite a few there, maybe even put some back, and the scrapbook.com one works absolutely perfectly, and then so does the Cosmic Shimmer one. They work absolutely identical. So that definitely means that all you really need is a dries tacky glue. So if you already have one of those in your stash, you are halfway there with this technique. But yeah, it's always good to see and good to kind of try them out. But it does leave a really gorgeous shine on your paper, and it leaves a little bit of texture, not sort of like dimensional texture, but just sort of like visual texture on the gold. So that was really fun. I am cutting down my panel a little bit, and then I have one of my favorite stamp sets at the moment, the Wildflowers stamp set from BoBunny, and I'm just going to add a little bit more to this card. As I said, it is a very simple card, and I was just kind of having fun with some of these little techniques. I'm going to use some VersaMark sticky embossing ink. This just leaves a nice sticky little patch where you can add some embossing powder. Make sure that you use your anti-static powder bag or powder tool or whatever you have so that you can pop that down and not get the embossing powder where you don't want it to be, because that can be super frustrating, and sometimes with sort of fine detail images it can be really hard to get a paintbrush in there to kind of sweep it away if it does get places that you don't want it. So make sure that you use your powder bag. That's probably one of my #1 tips with your embossing. And the second one is to make sure that your embossing pad is nice and juicy, because a dry embossing pad will leave you with plenty of problems and frustration. So I'm pouring on some white embossing powder and then giving it a nice flick from the back. I'm not too worried that this isn't super bright on the card background here. I don't want it to overtake anything. I don't want it to overtake that little bit of gold marbling that we have in the background. And of course the sentiment on the front is what needs to stand out as well. So that suits me just fine that it's in white as well. Now you guys have seen the stamp and die set before. I currently have 2 of the stamps and the die set. I think there is perhaps 4 or 5 stamp sets that match with the die set. This one is the encouragement stack, and then this one here is the essentials stack, and I have been having heaps of fun using these. Don't get me wrong, these are not new to the market. There are other companies who have done this in the past, but they had kind of bigger, bolder sentiments, and I really like these ones because the price point is much lower. They are smaller stamp sets, and they are kind of more like sub-sentiments almost, or some of them are just smaller sentiments that you could pop on the front, and I really like that. So today I am just going to ink these up using some VersaFine Onyx black ink, stamp it down with an acrylic block. I don't need a stamping tool for this, it's just quicker for me to use an acrylic block. And you get this beautiful image here with those 4 square dots on the outside, and that way with the die you can line them up perfectly and then die cut all of these sentiment strips in one run. I have just done this with lots of different colors of ink, and especially the VersaFine clear ones, which are the pigment inks which stamp beautifully, and I can just do it easily with an acrylic block, and it is really fun to just die cut these all and then put them in a little bottle on my desk, and I'm away laughing. I don't even have to think about cutting out sentiments for every single card that I create. So this is definitely something that I invested in. As I said, they have a lower price point than some of the others on the market, which definitely plays a big role for me when I'm choosing what I will have in my little craft space. So there you can see they cut out all of those little sentiment strips. So if you see me using them in the future, you'll know that I was able to just run them through in one pass and then come back to them later on. Now I am going to pop this on a tiny black border. I just felt like it needed a little something to help it stand out from when I was going to put it on my card base. So I've done my little trick here where I have 4 strips around the outside and 1 little strip on the inside. That way I can line everything up, and then once I have it in place I just push down on the inside, the middle of the card, and then pull out all of those 4 little tabs and everything is lined up nicely. It didn't matter quite so much here because I was cutting 2 of the edges anyway. I've got my little helper here beside me who's always itching to grab my scraps and create her own little creation to the side. But here again I just do the same trick, pull up the 4 tabs and then pull that one out of the middle, and it means I can line it up perfectly. I also thought I wanted to add the little black border because I had stamped my sub sentiment in black, and it always helps to kind of include those colours in more than one place on your card. I am putting this down onto a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card base, and then I'm just going to use some of the multi-medium glue. This is the Ranger multi-medium and the matte finish, and I do have a little video on my channel about how I get the glue into these glue bottles that I buy. If you just search how to fill a glue bottle on YouTube, then mine will probably be the first one that comes up the top. And then it's a nice mess-free, stress-free way to get the glue inside the bottle. And I'm just using a little bit of that glue on the back here. As I said, it's really important that I know that it's not going to be all shiny or make any marks if any squishes out the side or anything. Then I have a tiny little bit of foam tape on the back of my sub-sentiment, and then a couple of little white Nuvo drops, and that finishes off this whole card. This was a really fun card to make. It is fun to experiment with the Gilding Flakes and see what else I can do with them and how else you can use them. And as I said, red is probably not one of my go-to colours to be the main colour of a card, so it's fun to challenge myself, and I really like this red, gold and white card. So thank you so much for joining me today. This was my card for today, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks, bye!